Robert Duvall was stranded at Atlanta's Hartsfield Airport when he noticed the young man 2 seats over hadn't moved in 3 hours. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't looked at his phone. He was just sitting there with the particular stillness of someone carrying something too heavy to put down. What Duvall did next, and what the young man told him, neither of them planned. It was a Tuesday morning in February 2008. And the departure board at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport was doing what departure boards do during winter weather systems in the southeast, cycling through delays and cancellations with the impersonal efficiency of a machine that has no opinion about the plans it is disrupting. Robert Duvall's flight to Dulles had been canceled at 8:40. The next available departure was at 2:50 in the afternoon. He had 6 hours and 10 minutes and a gate chair in Concourse C. He had been in worse situations. He had been stranded in airports in the days before mobile phones, when a delay meant genuine disconnection from the rest of the world rather than the managed inconvenience it had become. He had waited out weather systems in terminals where the coffee was worse and the chairs were harder and the information was slower and less reliable. He had developed, over decades of this, a relationship with unplanned time that most people in the industry did not have. An ability to receive an unexpected gap in the schedule, not as a problem to be solved, but as an interval to be occupied on its own terms. He sat down, opened his book, and let the airport be what it was. He ordered coffee from the nearest kiosk, found a seat with a reasonable sightline to the window, and opened the book he had been carrying in his bag for 2 weeks and had not yet found sustained time to read. The gate area was the usual mixture of the resigned and the frustrated. Families rearranging themselves around changed plans, business travelers on laptops conducting the airport version of their regular days, a few people asleep in the particular collapsed posture of people who have stopped fighting the delay and surrendered to it. He noticed the young man at around 9:15, the way he noticed most things, peripherally, without intention, the information arriving and being filed before any decision had been made about what to do with it. He had spent 50 years training the part of himself that watches, and it had long since stopped requiring instruction. It watched whether he directed it to or not. He was in the second seat to Duvall's left, late 20s, dark jacket, a bag at his feet that suggested he had packed for a short trip. He was not on a laptop. He was not reading. He was not looking at his phone. He was sitting upright with his hands on his knees and his eyes on the middle distance in the specific way of someone whose attention is entirely occupied by something that has nothing to do with the airport around them. Duvall noted him and returned to his book. At 10:30, the young man had not moved. He had not taken out a phone, had not gone to get food or coffee, had not spoken to anyone or been spoken to. He was a fixed point in a gate area that was otherwise in constant low-level motion, people arriving, departing, shifting, adjusting. He sat in the middle of it with the concentrated stillness of an object that has its own gravity. Duvall read another 20 pages. At 11, a gate agent announced a further delay. The 250 was now expected at 4:10, and the gate area absorbed this information with the collective resignation of people who have already recalibrated once and know how to do it again. The young man did not react to the announcement. He did not appear to have heard it. Duvall closed his book. He looked at the young man for a moment, not with the overt attention that signals intention, but with the quiet peripheral noticing that 50 years of watching people had made second nature. The young man's hands on his knees were not relaxed. The stillness was not the stillness of someone at rest. It was the stillness of someone holding something in place by force of will, the way you hold a door shut against wind. He picked up his coffee, which had gone cold, and moved to the seat directly beside him. "Bad delay," Duvall said. The young man looked at him. His eyes took a moment to focus, the way eyes do when a person is returning from somewhere far inside themselves. "Yes, sir," he said. They sat in silence for a moment. "You haven't eaten," Duvall said. It wasn't an accusation. It was an observation delivered in the plain, matter-of-fact tone of someone noting a fact about the weather. The young man looked at him again. "I'm not hungry," he said. "No," Duvall said. "I don't suppose you are." Another silence. Outside the window, a ground crew was moving in the gray February light with the deliberate patience of people who have learned to work in weather that doesn't cooperate. "Where are you headed?" Duvall asked. The young man was quiet for a moment. "Home," he said, then, "I think." Duvall looked at him. "You think?" he said. The young man's hands tightened slightly on his knees. He looked at the window. "I haven't been home in 8 months," he said. "There are people there I owe an explanation to. I've been trying to figure out for 8 months how to explain something I'm not sure I understand myself." He said this in the flat, careful voice of someone who has been carrying a sentence for a long time and has finally found a context where saying it out loud seems marginally less difficult than continuing to carry it. Duvall said nothing immediately. This was one of the things that the young man, whose name was Nathan Cole, 27 years old, originally from a small town outside Chattanooga, Tennessee, currently living in a shared apartment in Seattle where he worked in software and had been working in software for 3 years, and had been trying to work out for 8 months whether that was what he was supposed to be doing with the one life available to him. Later said he remembered most clearly about the conversation. Not what Duvall said, but the quality of the silence before he said it. Most people, Nathan said, fill the silence after a difficult disclosure with something, reassurance, advice, a parallel story from their own experience. The man beside him in gate C14 did none of these things. He sat with the information for long enough that it became clear he was actually considering it. "What kind of explanation?" Duvall asked. Nathan looked at him. He had not yet registered who he was sitting beside, had not, in 3 hours of sitting in the same gate area with his attention turned entirely inward, looked carefully enough at any of the faces around him to recognize or fail to recognize them. The man beside him was an older man in a plain jacket with a book and a cold coffee cup. That was the full inventory. Had not, in 3 hours of sitting in the same gate area, looked carefully enough at anyone around him to recognize or not recognize them. "I quit my job 4 months ago," Nathan said. "I haven't told my parents. I've been paying my rent with savings and telling them everything is fine." He paused. "It is fine, mostly. I'm doing something else now, something I actually want to do, but I don't know how to explain to people who sacrificed a great deal to give me a stable life why I walked away from one." He said this to the window, not to Duvall. Duvall was quiet for a moment. "What are you doing instead?" he asked. Nathan glanced at him, slightly surprised, as if the question of what he had walked toward, rather than what he had walked away from, was not one he had expected anyone to ask first. "Writing," he said. "Trying to. I've been writing since I was 15, and I stopped for 3 years because the software job was practical, and I thought practical was the same as correct." He paused. "It isn't." "No," Duvall said. "It isn't." The flatness of the agreement, the absence of qualification, of encouragement, of the upward inflection that turns agreement into performance, seemed to land differently than reassurance would have. Nathan looked at him properly for the first time. "You look familiar," he said. "I have one of those faces," Duvall said. Nathan studied him for a moment, then something shifted in his expression. He started. "Tell me about the writing," Duvall said. Nathan stopped. The deflection he had been about to make, the modest, self-protective deflection that people make when they are about to be recognized and want to redirect, dissolved before it fully formed. He had been asked about the writing, not about the recognition, not about the films, about the thing Nathan had just told him mattered. Nathan stopped. Then, slowly, he told him. He talked for a long time, haltingly at first, with the slightly effortful quality of someone unused to saying these things out loud, and then more easily as the conversation found its own rhythm. He talked about what he was working on, a novel set in the town where he grew up, drawn from his grandfather's life in a way that he had not yet fully worked out how to explain to his grandfather, who was still alive and had opinions. He talked about why it mattered to him in ways he could articulate and ways he couldn't. He talked about the specific quality of the 3 years during which he had not written. The absence, he said, hadn't felt like freedom. It had felt like a room with the furniture removed, about why it mattered to him, about the specific quality of the 3 years during which he had not written, and what that absence had felt like from the inside. He talked about his parents, about his father who had worked the same job for 31 years and who understood consistency as a form of love and would struggle, Nathan believed, with a son who had chosen disruption as a form of integrity. Duvall listened. He asked questions, specific, unhurried questions about the work itself, about the story Nathan was trying to tell and why, about the difference between the writing he had done at 15 and the writing he was doing now. He did not offer opinions about Nathan's parents or about the phone call Nathan had not yet made. He did not produce, from his own experience, a parallel story about a time he had faced a similar difficulty and how it had resolved. He did not tell Nathan that his parents would understand, or that they wouldn't, or that it would be fine. He sat in the chair beside him in Gate C-14 of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport and paid the kind of attention to what Nathan was saying that Nathan had not received from anyone in 8 months. He did not tell Nathan what to do. At 3:15, the gate agent announced boarding for the 4:10 departure. Nathan Cole had eaten a sandwich from the kiosk, which Duvall had stood up and gotten for him at 12:30 without asking, and had drunk 2 cups of coffee, and had spoken more honestly about his own life than he had spoken to anyone in 8 months. Duvall stood and collected his bag. Nathan stood with him. "I don't know how to thank you," Nathan said. Duvall looked at him. "Call your father," he said, "not to explain, just to call. The explanation can come later, or it can come in pieces, or it can come in the writing itself if you do it right. But call him first because he's your father, and 8 months is a long time." Nathan looked at him. "What if he doesn't understand?" he said. Duvall picked up his book. "He might not," he said. "That's a separate question from whether you make the call." They boarded different sections of the same plane. Nathan Cole was in row 22. He did not see Duvall again after the gate. He called his father from the Atlanta airport parking structure at 4:40, standing beside his car in the cold February air, with his bag at his feet, before he let himself sit down and drive. The call lasted 41 minutes. His father did not fully understand. He also did not hang up. They talked for 41 minutes and agreed to talk again on Sunday. Nathan Cole has been writing for 16 years, since that Tuesday in February. He finished the first novel 2 years after the airport. It took another 3 years to find a publisher willing to take it, during which time he worked as a copywriter and kept writing in the evenings and on weekends, with the specific, unhurried persistence of someone who has decided that the timeline is not the point. The first novel sold modestly. The second sold well enough that the question of whether writing was practical became, finally, a different kind of question. He has published 2 novels, the second of which was dedicated to his father, who died in 2019, and who had, by the last years of his life, read both of Nathan's books more than once, and told anyone who asked about them with the particular pride of a man who had needed time to understand something and had eventually gotten there. He has told the story of Gate C-14 many times. He always ends it the same way. "I still don't know for certain who the man was," he says. "I have a strong suspicion. But what I know for certain is that he asked me about the writing before he asked about anything else. Everyone else had been asking about the job." The dedication in Nathan Cole's second novel reads, "For my father, who got there." He has never explained it in any interview. He has never needed to. If this story stayed with you, if you've ever been sitting in an airport or a waiting room, or anywhere between where you were and where you were going, carrying something too heavy to explain, subscribe, leave a comment, and hit the notification bell. More stories about the real character behind Hollywood's greatest legends, in the ordinary moments, the unplanned hours, the conversations that nobody scheduled, are coming every single week.